This is how entities do a lot of their work. And entities can either be physically attached to other people, or just be non-physical. Frequencies draw like vibrations. So when you resonate at a certain vibration, then you're going to attract like things. So like when you're depressed and going through, a low state, you're gonna sometimes have people around you who have like a poverty state of mind, or like to have pity parties, or be critical and very judgmental, or have difficulty like, paying their bills, just things of that nature. Whereas when you're more in an elevated state, or you're more in an abundant state, or just things are going well, sometimes you're going to be around things and people that are more attractive. You're going to receive better news. This happens with both, mirroring both physical and non-physical entities. So sometimes what happens when in the root, entities create fear, insecurities, or an over-reliance on the physical pleasures. Through this, they can manipulate, they distort the need for safety and security into compulsive behaviors that block grounding and the connection to higher chakras. The sacral chakra is where a lot of entities of all kinds do the most interaction, because this is where the Shakti energy is in its purest form and unrefined. And without proper or focus, this energy is just left free for the taking. When this energy is used with intent and will and drive, then it allows for more precise manifestation. This is why a lot of entities and attachments focus on this area in the sacral chakra. This is a primary center for spirits of lust. They amplify sexual cravings, distort healthy expressions of desires, and drain creative vitality. They manipulate the energy here by overreacting this chakra. Entities perpetuate cycles of lust, guilt, and emotional instability, often causing men to feel stuck and powerless. You'll notice that when a lot of people are ascending, especially even men in lines of work of like healing practices or energy practices or just spiritual practices, that there'll almost be this parallel between like sexual energy and like horniness, and the need for discipline and like hyper sensitivity to the occult. Like there's this parallel between the occult and sexuality, and you will see the blend over of people's disciplines on where their alignment is kind of like taking them. Like, okay, are they going like this more hotepi kind of path? And are they like kind of like alchemizing the energy that way? Or are they taking like the more creative route and trying to understand like, okay, what is this sacral energy like trying to help me to understand or develop about myself? Solar plexus, this is where a lot of work gets done. This is where a person who is in alignment vibrationally, is sound, is taking this creative force and realizing what is the actionable plan as it relates to me. How do I want to express this in the world around me? So this is why a lot of entities attack the sacral chakra, because if you can rob the identity and sense of purpose, or the sense of drive, passion of purpose for why it's being done, then the only thing that will be left is the husk of the ego, and just simply doing it simply because it needs to be validated. Because without knowing inwardly what you are and what you're doing for, then you'll need external validations to validate why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, like, do I love this woman, or is she a trophy wife? How do I know I love her? Well, if I don't have any sense of love, then I need people to look at her and validate it like a trophy wife. And, and if she's not always looking like, a doll flower, then she's not good enough, and I'm going to discard her for the next one. So these senses of lack have to be made up from somewhere. And these entities feed off of these things, because when we don't develop these things through our journey, because other entities are kind of feeding off of what that developmental energy was supposed to do for our human experience, then every time there's an interaction, whether it's an intimate interaction, whether it's an interaction that's just developing your connection in the physical realm, you know, like you're walking your life path, you might be an engineer, and putting your hands to things, the tools that you touch help you to connect and create things in this realm that give you your understanding or mirror your reflection of how you want the world to be. So when you lose your sense of purpose, or as men, when we lose our sense of purpose and we're kind of just like, okay, well, making the money just to make it, or fucking the baddest bitch just to have her, there's no sense of grounding and there's no sense of anchoring. So even after you've had all these people, you might look at like the Nick Cannons, or the people who had all these women and these connections, but they're so hollow that you don't get anything out of them. So as it relates to the solar plexus entity, this is another big area too that entities feed on, because it relates to the ego. And ego is an area of once you're in it, it's a lock-in, and it helps to solidify vices and create karmic patterns that kind of just keep going. Entities tend to feed on the pride and egoic desires and the need for validation. That's a very important one here, the need for validation. This creates illusions of control while simultaneously eroding the true personal power. And entities manipulate this by inflating the ego and leading to arrogance or deflate it, causing shame and a loss of self-worth. And that sense of loss is also a loss of power. The solar plexus is the battery center, is arguably is one of the main battery centers of the auric field. So when this power is lost, that's going somewhere. And the entities that drive these illusions to kind of lead you up just so that you can drop are waiting to feed off of this energy. So a lot of times, a lot of areas where there's a lot of masculine energy is hyper masculine energy, and it's surrounded by a hypersexuality and a strong need to be around a lot of connections, always jumping from one connection to the next one. Usually is also an indicator as well that there is a lack of internal solidarity, and that energy is spilling out regularly. And that even if you build into a connection with a person like this, they may have a lot of money, they may have a lot of things around them in the moment that you might want to take advantage of, but ultimately that structure that they have is not going to be around for a long time, because the energetic build surrounding their auric field has a lot of cracks, has a lot of energy spilling out. So it means that their foundations, things will get away from them very easily. You know, they might bring in the money, but they'll get robbed or make bad bets, or they'll just be hot, you know, and people will just get down on them, and you'll residually be around that energy, susceptible to those things, because these entities make them susceptible to those types of losses.